Oh hi, I'm Amy Griffiths and I'm a journalist in the Manx Radio newsroom, and I'm talking about diabetes because there's potentially positive news for those living with the condition on the Isle of Man. It's hoped there could be improvements to diabetes services here on the island in the next financial year. Manx Care says it's applying for funding in various areas after Diabetes Isle of Man made a presentation to Tynwald members on World Diabetes Day. Natasha Parry is from the charity.
We went in for the Tynwald briefing on World Diabetes Day, the 14th of November. And, primarily our aim was to raise awareness of diabetes and to discuss the prevalence of the condition on the island. We do have over 6% of the population living with the condition currently. And we know that there'll also be a lot of people walking around in pre-diabetes stage on island, which is sort of the stage where you have elevated blood glucose levels, but they're not raised high enough to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And it's just really raising awareness of that sort of stage of the condition, because if we can start to introduce preventative measures and awareness around the symptoms and the condition, then we can actually prevent people actually being diagnosed with type 2. So that was one of the aims of the Tynwald briefing that we did. And we also raised sort of 4 areas where we would like to see sort of investment from the government. And number 1 on that list was investment in sort of diabetic retinal screening, so the eye screening that is required for all people living with diabetes. And we actually don't have an established screening programme on island. So we know that that is actually part of the mandate with Manx Care, but we just wanted to highlight that with the MHKs to make sure that everybody was aware that this is a service that is really desperately needed for diabetic people. The second area that we talked about was investment in, technology, because this is it's sort of, there's lots of cutting edge technology out there, which really helps with the management of type 1 diabetes. And we'd love to see, a greater investment in that area from Manx Care so that people living with the condition have a better chance at good management. The third area was introducing sort of education and prevention programmes, which is what I've just touched on there. But it's also, for pre-diabetes stage, but also for those living with type 1 and also type 2, because it's a 24/7 condition. It's relentless, and sometimes you just need, to get that education to really understand your body and your condition. And the fourth point that we raised was investment in sort of psychological, emotional support for people living with the condition and their families as well, because it's often, seen as a family diagnosis. Individuals may be diagnosed with it, but it affects the wider family. There's so many different things to learn in terms of treatment, particularly with type 1, but also, it's sort of relearning how you've lived your life if you get diagnosed with type 2 in terms of, your food, any exercise and things like that. And like I said, it's relentless. So it does require that additional emotional support because it can weigh quite heavy on you as a condition. So those were the areas that we raised with them, and that's what we'd just like to see further investment in.
And off the back of that, we have spoken to Manx Care and they have come back with a response to those 4 main points in particular. So the first one, if we talk about the diabetic retinal eye screening programme, so they've told us that a business case to deliver this service has been approved by the Department of Health and Social Care, and a request for funding has been submitted to Treasury. Subject to this funding being included in next year's budget, Manx Care expects this service to become operational potentially next year. So how do you respond to that news?
I think that's a really positive step. Obviously, it's it feels like it's been a long time coming for the people of the island that are living with the condition. So any move towards a service being in place is just really positive. So that's great, and we look forward to seeing that service in place. Hopefully next year.
And then on the second point, more investment in new technology, particularly this hybrid closed loop technology, which can completely change how someone lives with diabetes. Manx Care says that this is subject to funding again. So how confident are you that the funding will be there?
all changes within healthcare come with a cost often, and we understand that there isn't an endless pot of money. But what we wanted to set out and help the MHKs and those in the decision making positions see is that investment in this technology now will prevent further spending in the future on the likes of complications due to poor blood sugar control and poor management, complications like amputations, like heart attacks, like strokes. All of these things are unfortunately part and parcel of the complications to do with diabetes. So if we can prevent people needing care for those complications through better management, then we're going to prevent money needing to be spent in that area too. So yes, it's really positive that they are looking into it in terms of a funding option, but it's really to see that the money is actually going to be saved in the future. So it's a saving really.
And in terms of further education for particularly type 2 diabetes, they do say that there is an education programme currently on the island, but accept that there can always be more. What more would you like to see in this sense?
In terms of the Desmond course, which Manx Care mentioned, I know that it's a really great resource. I know that there's lots of positive feedback for the individuals that do go on the course, but I am also aware that there are quite long waiting lists. So it's just investment in sort of training more people to be able to deliver that course, getting more people through the door in that sense to actually access the course. But, yes, it's a very positive course that they do have on the Desmond, but it's just let's get more people access to that.
And then finally, in terms of further psychological care for people who are living with the condition, Manx Care does say it's developing a Live Well with Chronic Illness service, so that's going to be open to all patients who have a chronic disease, including diabetes, ME, cancer, and working in partnership with Diabetes Isle of Man to offer peer support. So how needed do you think a facility like that is here on the island?
Peer support is crucial and it really is invaluable. Just having shared experience with other people to sort of sit and have a cup of tea with and talk about your condition, it makes such a difference, and you can really leave somewhere feeling a lot more positive about, living with diabetes. In terms of living well with chronic illness that Manx Care have mentioned, I think that is something, it's an incredibly positive move, because ultimately you want somebody to be able to thrive with the condition. You don't want them to just feel like, oh, I have diabetes, I have to sort of stop, living my life. So to be promoting living well with, a chronic illness is obviously a positive thing. So, we really look forward to seeing that in place sort of as soon as it's available.
In terms of a timeline, what kind of timeline would you like to see these facilities and these options being available to diabetes sufferers here on the island?
Well, I mean, if I can come in to Manx Radio to chat to you guys on World Diabetes Day 2024, and there's a real indent in these services, hopefully the eye screening service will be in place, or at least in the final stages of being in place. And, if people are feeling supported with the condition, whether that be through education, through emotional support, if I can come in and chat to you guys in a year's time, and that is the general feedback, that there has been improvement in services and greater access to services, then that's absolutely a win for us. We understand things don't happen overnight, but no, if within a year's time, if I can come in and things have greatly improved, then that would be amazing.
The team at the Manx Centre for Endocrinology, Diabetes and Metabolism, which was previously known as the Diabetes Centre, has served local residents for nearly 25 years. Manx Care says it offers the full range of subspecialist services, which are available at most UK diabetes centres, and until March 2022, also offered small-scale retinopathy screening. It says the Manx Diabetes Service coordinates the care of approximately 90% of local people with type 1 diabetes, and the UK average is less than 50%, and is ahead of the UK average in adoption of continuous glucose monitoring technology, and supervises insulin pump treatment in approximately 24% of local people with type 1 diabetes, and the UK average is 12%. Manx Care adds that retinopathy screening is an essential component of diabetes care, and this service is identified as statutory under its mandate. A business case to develop this has been approved by the Department of Health and Social Care, and a request for funding has been submitted to Treasury. Subject to this funding being included in the 2024-25 healthcare budget, Manx Care expects this service to become operational in 2024. Manx Care is also developing a Living Well with Chronic Illness service, which will be open to all patients who have a chronic disease. And it adds that it works in partnership with Diabetes Isle of Man to offer peer support.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.